WeakAuras is a sandbox add-on which allows you to create custom notifications for basically anything that happens in the game. So if you're having trouble spotting things like mind games or when people are drinking, this add-on will solve that problem for you. WeakAuras has been around forever, but in Arena it's now become a necessity for top PvP players. But why? Having exceptional awareness is something someone like cdew, hydra, and venruki certainly have, and yet they use WeakAuras in shadowlands. The reason for this is that Arena is so chaotic, paying attention to everything happening at once is nearly impossible, making it impossible to instantly react, which is now necessary to win games. WeakAuras acts as a third eye and significantly increases your chances to be the first to react to danger and win more games because of it. So today, we're gonna teach you all the best WeakAuras you can use to instantly increase your rating in World of Warcraft. But before we do, if you're interested in uncovering the reasons why pro players make the decisions they make, we've got you covered over at skillcaps.com. There, you'll find countless arena commentaries from some of the world's best players where they break down step by step what their decision making is in the games that they play, so you can follow along and learn exactly how the best players approach different matchups. From learning how to beat the most difficult comps to figuring out exactly what pro players are doing that you're not, you'll find our commentaries useful no matter your skill level to help you improve much faster than with any other resource. So if you're interested, head on over to skillcaps.com/wow and sign up today. Link in the description. We've broken down this guide into 4 parts, starting with the best enemy buffs to track. Starting with enemy buffs, if you've ever died to Combustion or Avenging Wrath, then you don't need to be told how important this is to track, which is probably everyone watching this video. The sooner you can react to these cooldowns, the better your chances of surviving. So listen up. Once you have WeakAuras installed, open the configuration by typing /WA. Click New Aura in the top left corner, and then click on Dynamic Group. Name this group Enemy Buff/CDs and hit enter. Search the spell you want to track on Wowhead. In the URL for the spell, copy the string of numbers. This is a spell ID. Check the box for exact spell ID and paste the spell ID from Wowhead into the box. Scroll down and set the check unit count and set the operator to be greater than 0. Next, go to the display tab and check the box that says show cooldown. Finally, you can customize your alert to include borders or sounds when the buff is active on an enemy in Arena. Personally, I like to add a glow to each icon using the glow option in the display tab. This makes the icon grab my attention instantly. I also like to add a sound to the icon using the action tab. There are many sounds to choose from and you can customize them for each spell you want to track. When you're done customizing, set the name of this WeakAura to Combustion. To track another spell, simply duplicate the WeakAura you created by right-clicking on the WeakAura and clicking Duplicate. Set the name of this new aura to the next spell you would like to track. In this case, we will track Avenging Wrath. The only thing we will need to change in order to start tracking Avenging Wrath is the spell ID. Locate the spell ID on Wowhead and copy it into the spell ID box, making sure you have your new aura selected. You have now started tracking Avenging Wrath. We have shown you how to create notifications for the most important enemy cooldowns in the game, Combustion and Avenging Wrath, but you can add as many or as few cooldowns as you want. Here is our recommended list of enemy buffs worth tracking. Once again, we will be showing you how to get our pre-made set of WeakAuras at the end of this video. I would definitely add as many cooldowns as possible, especially the ones people tend to ignore like Echoing Shock and Weapons of Order. The more cooldowns you track, the more aware you will be in Arena. If there's anything else you want to track, you can simply use Wowhead to get the correct spell ID if you're unable to track the buff correctly with just the spell name. Once you've added a few spells, select the dynamic group you originally created. You will notice that the bar is growing downwards. We can fix this by changing how the bar grows in the Group tab. Navigate to the Group tab and set Grow to Centered Horizontal. Finally, we can change the size positioning of the entire bar. On the same Group tab, you can adjust the scale and change the X and Y position. I personally like the Y offset to be set to 200 so that it is above my character. Play around with the settings until you find something that works for you. Next, let's move on to the most important buffs and debuffs to track on your character. You probably know how hectic arenas can be. It is really easy to miss seeing important buffs and debuffs on yourself when you're focused on all the other things happening during the game. Luckily, we can use WeakAuras to track the most important buffs and debuffs on yourself so that you can have more awareness during intense PvP gameplay. Setting up buffs and debuffs notifications for yourself is almost identical to the section we just covered. Let's start with one of the most important debuffs right now, mind games. Start by creating a new dynamic group. This time we will call it Debuffs. With the debuff group selected, add a new icon and name it Mind Games. The main difference with debuffs is how we set up our triggers. Go to the trigger tab and set type to aura, unit to player, and aura type to debuff. Find the spell ID of Mind Games and enter it into the exact spell ID checkbox. Go to the display tab and click show cooldown. Once again, you can customize the look of this aura by adding a glowing border or sound notification. Here's a list of debuffs we recommend tracking along with their spell ID. Although it's worth noting you may not want to track all of these depending on the class you play. So use this as a starting point and feel free to add or remove others as you see fit. We do however highly suggest you track Ursol's Vortex, especially if you're a melee DPS with mobility. Many melee players make the mistake of using their mobility cooldowns while in Vortex, which sometimes puts them in a terrible position. Make sure the aura type is set to debuff for all of these debuffs. Finally, in addition to tracking debuffs, you can also track important buffs on yourself. You can use the same group as debuffs if you prefer. However, we recommend creating a new dynamic group that you can position elsewhere, specifically for buffs. And in order to add these buffs, you'll need to set the type to aura, the unit to player, and the aura type to buff. Here's the list of spells we recommend adding. This time you can import them using their names instead of spell IDs. But again, just double check to make sure you've got the right buffs being tracked and use Wowhead for spell IDs if needed. There might be some spec-specific buffs you want to monitor, so add those too. You know that awful feeling when you are mid-fight in arena only to realize you forgot to pick up a health stone in the starting room? Fortunately, there's a weak aura that will prevent that from happening ever again. If you are Kyrian, you might have forgotten to summon your steward before an arena game. We can fix this problem easily with a weak aura. Create a new aura as a dynamic group and title it Missing Items. And add an icon titled File Missing. In the trigger tab, set the type to status and set the status to item count. Add the item ID of File of Serenity in the bar and set the item count to be less than or equal to 0. Now you'll have a notification every time your file is missing. You can add Healthstone the same way by duplicating the aura but changing the item ID to Healthstone. You can also use a similar weak aura to track buffs that you often apply in the starting room of an arena, like Arcane Intellect or Power Word Fortitude. To track any missing buffs, simply copy the triggers that we have on screen now and replace the aura name with the name of the buff you want to track. In this last section, we're gonna go over some standalone weak auras we think you should have. The first and most important weak aura everyone should have is an alert for mind games. This spell is crucial to track for both healers and DPS. Although we already suggested adding this to the dynamic debuffs group you made, you might want to use this specific weak aura instead. You never want to be caught off guard by mind games and accidentally heal the enemy team or damage yourself, so get this weak aura to make it easier to play against priests. It is important to keep this weak aura in the center of your screen because of how important it is to track. The second weak aura everyone should have is an alert for the Night Fae Pod Tender ability. This weak aura will give you a giant notification to kill the pod anytime you kill a player with his Soulbind ability. There is nothing worse than having the opponent you just killed rest right in front of you, and this weak aura will prevent that from ever happening again. Unless of course the pod gets shielded or healed by the enemy team. Finally, get a weak aura to alert you whenever an enemy healer is drinking. Sometimes it can be difficult to pay attention to sneaky enemy healers going away for a drink. Use this weak aura so you will never miss another healer drinking again. And there you have it. These are some of the best weak auras for PvP. Many of these weak auras are currently used by the best players in the game. This add-on can help you become more aware of the most important events in your arena games. Having clear visual and audio notifications for these events gives you the ability to react as quickly as the pros. If you want to test out these weak auras for yourself, head over to our Discord, which is linked in the video description. There, you can join our growing PvP community and get instant access to our guides, tier lists, and add-ons.